From the Matrix Home Solutions Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey.
Mike Madigan runs the Democratic House floor for 30 plus years running. He's promising this and he's stealing that. Where can you get that kind of money? He's using your house like his own piggy bank. You ought to know by now. You can pay off your house here in Illinois, but you can never keep up with the taxes. Oh, how it's always been the plan to have a taxpayer pay, no doubt. Not a matter of if anymore, but when you're moving out.
Dan and Amy, good morning. That's theme music, which follows him around wherever he goes. Means it's time for our weekly conversation with Ted Dabrowski, president at Wirepoints, wirepoints.org, wirepoints.com, gets you to the same site. All things Illinois policy related. And people have been, just as the song said, moving out over the last decade. Wirepoints.com documented it over the weekend. Ted, thanks for joining us, as always. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Amy.
So the last decade, change in population, Illinois versus our Midwest neighbors, how'd we do?
Yeah, well, we lost. We're one of 3 states to lose population over the decade: West Virginia, Mississippi, and include there Illinois. Right. So we lost 18,000 people, which is a big deal because that means that we wiped out all the people who were born. You know, we always have a net births minus deaths. We always have a positive there, and we always have foreign immigrants coming in, and we wiped out all those and more and lost population where. You know, places like Florida and Texas, grew by 2.5 to 4 million people. So it's just a massive difference of growth and tax base and energy and production and investment.
Well, yeah, and the order of magnitude is the key. 18,000 people. If people hear that number, they say, well, 18,000 people in a state of 12 or 13 million people, that's no big deal. But it is a big deal when you talk about Texas or Florida in the millions of gain, and also even our neighbors, Indiana, we lost 18,000 in the last decade. Indiana gained 300,000.
300,000,
wow.
Yeah. That's huge. That's huge. Now, you're talking about, in our case, in their case, they're adding, a Rockford and whatever you want to pick, a Naperville, right? They're adding 2 big cities to their population. And think about that. What that means is you've got a tax base that's growing. You've got more investment. You got consumption. So it's a vibrancy that every state needs and wants, right? And if you're a job creator, well, you're going to move there as well because that's where people are. If you are provider of goods, well, you're going to move there because that's where people are buying stuff. And when you look at Illinois, you're going to say, I got to think about that one. And that's exactly what Warren Buffett said a few years ago. He says, I'm not putting my production there because they're going to come after me to pay all those pension debts back, and I'll never make money.
And how do you think
I'll be stuck there 30 years?
Yeah. How do you think COVID has exacerbated the exodus from Illinois?
It's really complex, right? Because it's hard to think about how things are moving. We definitely saw big moves to the suburbs. We've seen apparently Cook County grew, and that was a surprise for people. Overall, 87 out of the 102 counties in Illinois shrank. But COVID adds a whole new element to it. In fear, you're going to have a whole bunch of people who are ticked off that they're being shut out from their work, that they're being, in many cases, closed out from schools for a while, or are being forced under the diktats of Governor Pritzker. They may get ticked off, and they also realize that they can go work in Colorado and earn money in Illinois, or Florida for that matter. So, I don't think it bodes well at all for Illinois, but it's hard to predict. I think it's one of those things that are hard to predict in the short term.
There's also, some subtext to these numbers of in-migration, out-migration that are important. So, like, for example, the median household income of people moving in versus the median household income of people moving out. And I know a couple of years ago, Illinois had the highest spread in the nation in the wrong direction, meaning there's about a $20,000 difference in the median household income of people moving in versus those moving out. So then, that also speaks to a diminished productive capacity.
Oh, it's fascinating, and that's one of the, I shouldn't say it's a surprise in the numbers, right? But you're right. The gap, and I'm trying to find our data here, but it's about $20,000. The difference between somebody who leaves Illinois and somebody who comes in. So we're importing people with less means, right? That means a smaller tax base, and we're losing people with more means, and often that means they're more productive, they hire people, they have businesses, and so we're draining our best, on average, and we're getting back people who are less productive, and that's going to cost us over time, and that ignores the net loss we had of people, right? When you look at the actual out-migration numbers of people leaving Illinois, not births and deaths and not immigration, foreign immigration, but just people leaving from one state to the other, we're the second worst in the country, just behind New York. So we're losing people and we looked at every demographic. We've looked at every age group, every income group, and we're a net loser in every single one of them.
I got a way we can make it up, and the Chicago City Council is way ahead of me.
What?
We bump up the salaries of politicians like Chicago aldermen who are scheduled to see a 5.5% increase in their salaries to $130,000, which is more than double the median household income in Chicago.
Well, that's a good way to do it. You're bringing up an important story that I think we've kind of picked up over the last week, and that's while all this stuff is happening, right? COVID, CRT, all the crime, Afghan, all the things that have been going on. There's something else going on all the time, and that's the bills for the average Illinoisan keep going up, and we're seeing school contracts being renegotiated with big raises and big everything, big benefits. We're seeing other places trying to issue pension obligation bonds so they can hide the pension problem. It's the property taxes and pension debts are going up. So as we're ignoring all those things in the meantime, they're going to get worse, and the fiscal cliff is going to be bigger, and the bill is going to be higher, including things like salaries for our politicians.
Explain why pension obligation bonds to fund pension payments is lose-lose.
Well, it's what some cities are doing, and we just saw East Moline, and Rock Island. They'd like to do that. It's so cheap to borrow right now that cities are saying, hey, we can go borrow all that money that we owe to our pension debts, right? 30, 40, 50, 100 million, all these cities are in deep debt. And they just want to borrow it, stick it in the pension funds, and effectively it's a net gamble. The cities are hoping to borrow cheap and then to take that money invested in Wall Street, and these politicians think that they can do better than the borrowing cost, and if they make money, they're going to say, hey, we did well, and they're going to pump that money into the pension fund. But if they do poorly and they lose money in the markets, guess who's going to have to pay the bill? The taxpayers. So it's really letting politicians gamble with taxpayer money, and heads I win, tails you lose kind of thing.
Is there any town in Illinois that has a budget surplus?
Oh, yeah, forget that. I mean, there's a few cities like Naperville, which are younger cities that have grown a lot, and so I don't think anybody's got a surplus because everybody's hiding all these pension debts. So when you put these pension debts back in, it's all ugly for everybody. It's just a question of whether it's really ugly or just ugly.
Speaking of pensions, just sticking on this topic, I don't know who really cares about this other than us anymore, but I'm going to continue to raise the issue as you continue to work the issue, just for our own enjoyment. As I've used this example before, like the musicians on the Titanic playing their instruments as the Titanic song, doing it for their own enjoyment. So that's the same thing here. The recent report on the Chicago Police Pension Fund, some of our listeners' ears may perk up on that. Not good news, and it's not just about the dire funding level of 22%. There are other problems.
Well, this is the problem with all the stuff that happens in Illinois, right? And you tie in the corruption to it. So you take pensions. You're talking about billions of dollars that are being managed by let's say bureaucrats and overseen by politicians, right? What can go wrong? And what we're seeing is that there's all kinds of games being played between money being moved. There's a pretty dire report out by a group that from pensioners who wanted to challenge it. They want an audit of the pension funds, and they want a different view than the official political view. And it just found a lot of scathing things about the games that are played there. And I think they need to be proven, but a lot of allegations of mismanagement, a lot of game playing, as we know, and of course how dire the funding is. Hey, but Dan, important point about pensions. Pensions are boring; people's eyes glaze over. But I think when we're talking about all the bad things that Illinois is doing, the reason we're bringing it up is because when the next property tax bills start coming and the next income tax hike discussions start, this will be why. Pensions will be one of the big reasons why. So people should be aware of that.
Well, right. I mean, we we have tried to beat this drum as loudly and as often as we can, but in Illinois, you don't own your home. It's collateral for somebody else's pension, and the value is just whittled away. Your equity is whittled away because of the confiscatory property tax rates. And then even in this little bump from city to suburbs, which won't last, you can't win. You can't get a return on investment. You can't even maintain the home's value long term. And, that's people, when they go to sell, all of a sudden realize, wow, what I thought I was going to have, what I thought my home was worth, what I thought it would set me up to do when I want to retire or want to do something else, it's just not, the value isn't going to be there, so the money's not going to be there.
Well, yeah, you can already see that problem when you travel around the Peorias, and I've talked about that. When you just drive around those neighborhoods, you'll see the housing stock doesn't look good. It doesn't look healthy, and it hasn't moved over here to the wealthy suburbs of Chicago. But at some point, those people who've been supporting a lot of these failed policies will say, "Hey, what happened? What happened to my home values? Why can't I sell? Why?" And at some point, the math always kicks in. It's just not there yet, and certainly not with the multi-billion-dollar bailouts we've gotten from the federal government. But when that money runs dry, I don't know. Is it 2 years from now, 3 years from now? It's going to be, what happened, and why didn't somebody fix all this? We'll be finally talking about it, but not now. Maybe a few years from now.
And of course, this largely goes to fund K through 12 school systems. So how are we doing? I'm so glad you asked. The National Assessment of Educational Progress, for the past 20 years, achievement broken down by school district level, of the 27 U.S. urban school districts that reported their results for 2019, from Boston and Chicago to Fort Worth and Los Angeles, not a single one of these 27 large urban school districts, not a single one can say a majority of the black 8th grade students in their care are proficient in either reading or math. And some of the numbers are just stunning, although you shouldn't be stunned anymore. Detroit, 4% proficiency for math, black 8th graders, 5% for reading. Milwaukee, 5% for math, 7% for reading. Chicago, New York, in the teens.
Yeah, what it is what's sad about it is we continue to defend the current model, and actually we're tweaking the current model now. So we're adding all the equity elements and all that, and none of those speak to merit. None of those speak to just to becoming how do you want to say it, competent in things. I just saw a new higher ed study that's being done. It's all the same thing: more equity, get rid of merit, get rid of competence, and when you look at those results that you mentioned, it's really sad. It's sad, but I guess it's beyond sad now. Nobody seems to care. But at some point, again, it's a system that has to break down. I don't think you could design a system that does worse than what it does. You couldn't purposely design a system that does what it does, right? You couldn't. How do you design a system that gets 5% proficiency in reading? You can't.
Right, and then what's happening in the selective enrollment schools for the small percentage of students that get to go to those schools, like in Chicago? One parent of a child at Peyton, she described it this: it's like the New Jacobins, except instead of knitting needles, Madame Defarge moderates Instagram accounts. Which is a great Dickens reference, by the way. But more to the point, the selective enrollment schools, those kids aren't really necessarily getting that much of a better education. They just have a better education at home.
Right, and then you get back to the whole family impact and all that. I think really what this is, and I think we're talking just about COVID and this what's going to happen here. We're hoping, right, that this whole mess opens up the eyes to people of what has to happen. Such a new generation of learning, and a new generation of how to learn. And it's maybe still a pipe dream, but when you see these results and you see the funding problems we're going to have and the pension problems, and you look at the pensions that the teachers are making, in many places, and superintendents, you just say the whole system is broken, it's corrupt. But until I don't know, until it breaks, we continue to do the same thing.
We were just talking to a Chinese dissident business person who called the Chinese communists a mafia state. I think that has application outside of Beijing. He is Ted Dabrowski. He's the president of Wirepoint, wirepoint.org for all things Illinois policy related. Ted, thanks as always.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to Dan and Amy on your smartphone. Download the AM560 mobile app today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Balance of Nature's fruits and vegetables in a capsule, changing the world one life at a time.
I've got a 7-year-old and I'm a 47-year-old, and he's just learning to skateboard, and I was a skateboarder since 1980. He had been begging me all week to prove to him that I could do a kickflip, because he really hasn't seen Daddy be an active guy. You know, I do all that at work, and when I come home, I'm exhausted. This weekend, I had to haul a whole bunch of pallets to the back of the house because I was using them for projects and stuff. And all of a sudden, I'm outside skateboarding with my son, and I'm doing kickflips and other tricks I haven't done in 20 years. And I'm like, this isn't me. This is who I used to be, but this is